Hello.
Hi.
Welcome to the next episode of the BRIO in the Box podcast.
New space, who dis?
What's up? Look, we're not in the closet.
We're out of the closet.
We're in the BRIO office.
Yay.
Who built this nice office?
I don't know, but he was really good.
Really good. Really good job. David Riley.
Yeah.
Not just handsome, not just a great CrossFit coach. Also pretty darn handy.
Very handy. I did all of it.
Yeah,
Start to finish. Atlas helped me. He was my little minion.
Mm-hmm.
It was good.
He wanted to learn some things, so got to throw on a little tool belt and teach the boy some framing and some... What all did you teach him?
He helped with the framing and the drywall. So,
nice.
Yeah. It was hard to get. He has a very busy schedule of gymnastics and hanging with his friends that I had to work around. So,
yeah.
He and I have a busy schedule as well. So, most of the building was like in between classes or on a Saturday afternoon or whatever. So, it was just tough to find the time.
Yeah. We got so many shelves that I can fill with books.
Yeah.
These are actually just IKEA, basic Billy bookcase shelves. David just trimmed them in all nice.
Yeah.
Got a little crown molding up there. I don't think you can quite see that, but yeah, so much room for activities, so many books. I do slightly regret that for about the last 10 years, I've been accumulating books digitally on my Kindle.
Yeah.
I've read hundreds of books on nutrition and human psychology and all these things, but I don't own them in a physical copy. No, I wish I did, but...
I'm definitely glad that I didn't buy a single zombie apocalypse book because nobody needs to keep those lying around.
No, those can go.
Those are all Kindle appropriate.
I have visited the used bookstore to accumulate some more. And I've been finding it handy to have my little library here in the BRIO Plus office to be like, here, take this one, here, read this, and already doing some book exchange stuff with people. So I will take any books off your shelf that people don't want to own anymore.
As long as they're like appropriate.
In the realm of like nutrition and health and that kind of stuff.
We don't need any romance novels or anything.
Yeah, I don't want your zombie books or romance novels. Okay, so got something new on the table in the BRIO Plus lineup. You've heard me talk at length about the benefits of beef liver. It's the most nutritious food on earth. Almost every culture anywhere in the world, anytime they would successfully hunt a large animal, the liver was the prized part of it. Even other carnivore and omnivore species prize the liver first. So many animals besides humans understand that that's like the center of nutrition. It's your best source for bioavailable iron, heme iron, choline, which is a rare nutrient, pretty much all the B vitamins that you're looking for, B12, folate, which is B9, all these great things. Copper, which is a rare mineral to find otherwise in the diet. Lots of great stuff, but people hate it.
Liver is gross.
Eating it. Liver is gross. And I agree, and I'm a little bit sad that I didn't grow up eating liver and develop a taste for it. I do enjoy a good pate sometimes, but it's just not part of the regular rotation of the diet. I've talked at length about doing the frozen liver and cutting it in little chunks and just swallowing it like a pill just to get it in me, get it in you on a regular basis. The kids do that too sometimes.
But even that is real tough for some people.
Even that's real tough for some people. It's a little bit gross. It's definitely more cost effective, which is, I would always recommend that people do things from real food first, but acknowledging that some people just will not do that.
Right.
So in the BRIO Plus lineup of the few supplements that we do recommend, I just did a grass-fed desiccated beef liver capsule. Right. So if you want to take it in a very civilized way, capsules can be your friend. So they are available here in the gym.
Yeah, you don't taste it.
You don't taste it. So desiccated liver is basically just if it's dehydrated and then pulverized into a powder. So as second best to real food as possible. And I would even recommend that above like taking a bunch of synthetic or even more processed, like taking just B12 and just heme iron and just folate supplements. Like this is basically just like a pulverized desiccated. It's just dehydrated and blended up.
Right.
So there you go. It's on the shelf just outside the office.
Readily available.
Get
it in ya.
Okay, so what else new? What have you been up to?
So, we've talked at length in previous episodes of my ongoing battle against mental health. A lot of family mental health issues in my world. And I'm always looking to improve and looking to challenge myself in new ways. And I think we do a lot of like physical stuff. We try to eat well. We try to supplement the missing parts, try to exercise, try to go outside, try to be in the sun, all those really important things.
Family, social connections.
Yeah. But I was starting to think, what can I do for like mental stimulation? Because I read some of your books, but I read a lot of stupid garbage fiction. So I was like, I need to come up with a way to challenge myself mentally. And so this all sort of stemmed because I remember we were hanging out with Bonnie and Ian one time, and I don't remember what we were talking about, but I said at one point that one of my greatest regrets in life was that I never was musical. You know, I never really learned how to play an instrument. I had a drum kit for a short amount of time, but never really put time into it. And I love music. You and I, like, one of our favorite things to do is go see live music. We travel to do that. That's one of our things. And I always just wished I was more musical. So Bonnie was like, well, yeah, too late now. And I was like, oh shit, you're right. Like, I still have so much time ahead of me. And even though I've missed the sort of youth where you can just soak it up like a sponge, I'm like, hell, I can do it. It'll be good for my brain and keep me busy. So I picked up an instrument.
Yes.
And the heritage of our like Maui life and everything. And, you know, I did some research and stuff, and I decided the ukulele was going to be it. Yes. So starting in January, I started playing the ukulele.
Yeah. So, and David practices a lot. He's very dedicated. He's stuck with it. So the background music of our life together in our home, now there's just always these lovely ukulele songs being played. So yeah, it's neat.
It's great because, first of all, the ukulele is one of the more comfortable instruments to learn.
Thanks for not picking like the accordion
or like the violin or something where you're just like through the house. So, but I like the sound of ukulele. You know, I kind of wish I would have learned guitar younger. Ukulele's pretty close, and it's a good stepping stone. So who knows? But I just really, really enjoy it. It's super fun. It's pretty comfortable to pick up the basics, and then, like you said, I've just spent like every day at least 30 to 60 minutes. But there's some days where I'll spend 4 hours throughout the day just playing away. Picking it up. It's super fun.
It kind of stemmed too from, I was having a conversation with someone this morning actually about this. Everybody's got different brain types or personality tendencies, and that I don't think very many of them are explicitly bad or explicitly good. I think you have to understand yourself and your learning style and your tendencies, and then just try to leverage those things for good and not evil. And so if I can, overstep my bounds and describe you, which is you're prone to ruminating thoughts.
Absolutely.
Which for evil turns into anxiety, ruminating on things, looping on things, anxious thoughts about either things that have happened or even worse, things that haven't happened yet, and you're just inventing in your head.
Yeah.
But man, if you could take, that's like a high focus, a high ability to stick with something, to see something through to the end. I've always struggled to find the word, but I describe you as the complete opposite of a procrastinator.
Right.
I would think about things and plan things for months and then probably never do them. Whereas this office is a great example of like, you had an idea, you made the plan, you executed the plan, you got it done in a pretty timely, timeline, and it's awesome. So those personality tendencies, you just have to leverage them for good. And so instead of doom scrolling social media or looping on anxious things or revisiting awkward interactions from when you were a server 20 years ago, like stuff like that. It's like, hey, what if we just put a ukulele in your hand?
Yeah.
And you keep your hands busy, you keep your mind busy, good for many reasons, but just channel that ability to like loop on something and stick with something for good.
Yeah. Yeah. And I've definitely noticed an improvement with that. And it's such an easy thing that I can, I don't have to set it up. I literally have it sitting beside the couch. And so if I feel myself like spending too much time on my phone, or if I'm thinking about stupid things, I can be like, Kate, just change what we're doing here. Let's grab it and just strum away. But yeah, it's neat that I just turned 46. So I started when I was 45, but it's just neat that even at 45, you can train yourself to learn something new. Sure. And it's really cool because just like anything, and everybody that's tried CrossFit knows that the first time you try to learn the clean and jerk or the snatch or anything like that, it's always like super awkward and uncomfortable and weird. And you're like, what the fuck am I doing? And it's the same thing with all of these skills. It was the same for me doing uke. And now I'm getting better and it's coming around, and I'm like, you have those sort of milestones that you hit. You're like, oh shit, I couldn't do that before. And it's just such a like neat, motivating thing, and just such a great way to spend your time.
Yeah. I think it's super cool. Yeah. And modeling that behavior for the kids too. Hey, it's perfectly fine to like struggle, with your mental state in these ways, but here's some tools for how you can turn that towards the good side of things.
Yeah.
Atlas has picked up a big affinity for drumming.
Yeah.
So he will stay in that zone and, drum for hours, like 4 hours in a row sometimes. So it's good that you guys kind of have the like musical thing together.
Yeah. Yeah. It's been fun. And Dash, like, he likes to, every once in a while, he'll grab, I have 3 ukes now.
There's a collection. And they're not beside the couch. They're hanging on the wall in our living room. So if you ever walk into our house, there's now a ukulele. And you bought 6 hooks knowing there's going to be more of these.
Yeah.
So there's currently 3 with 3 more empty spaces coming soon to a living room near you. More ukes.
It's funny because when I first was like, I think I'm going to pick up the uke. I just thought ukulele was ukulele. And then I like learned more about it. And so, well, there's so many different types of ukuleles you can have. And then the more I read about it, the more I see the people that have been playing for years, and they'll have 20 or 30 different ukuleles. I'll be like, geez, this is quite the accumulation of stuff. But
okay, why don't you give us 3 fun facts about ukulele?
3 fun facts.
How many strings does a ukulele have?
A ukulele has 4 strings.
How many does a guitar usually have?
6.
Okay, so that's different.
Yeah. The other differences are the top string is a higher string. Normally on a guitar, it goes like from low down to high in tone. But the traditional ukulele, it goes high and then low, higher, highest. So that's different. But then you can also do a low G ukulele, which means it is highest on, or lowest tone on the top. And then there's just different sizes. So there's like the soprano is the smallest ukulele, and then there's the concert, and then the tenor, and then there's the baritone, which is basically a mini guitar. It has the same bottom 4 strings as a guitar. So that's the newest one that's on order. It should be here any day. Uke number 4. All right, that's a little bit about me. What have you been up to?
Well, summer's been busy.
Yes.
August specifically was super busy.
That's an understatement.
Yeah, the very quick timeline. I finished my master's at the end of June, wrote 8 comprehensive exams in one day, managed to pass them all. I decided to write the exams at that time sort of last minute. I was planning, because I knew the summer was going to be busy, to leave it until November, and then kind of last minute, well, I better try.
Yeah.
And if I pass, bonus, and if I fail, well, I'm still writing them in November anyway. Managed to pull it out, which I think is the point. Like, the point of doing this was to learn the things. So I should have the knowledge to be able to be tested on the knowledge at any given time. Yeah.
And it's pretty like well known that you do very well at tests and exams. So it's not like you're the type of person that needs to worry and spend a lot of time prepping.
Yeah, you can. Yeah, exactly. So I think if we're going to talk about mental states that can be leveraged for good, maybe let's go the bad direction first. Is probably some like ADD type tendencies of squirrel brain, I call it, where I figuratively and literally have 100 tabs open at any given time.
Yeah. You should see her phone. It's crazy.
It stops counting at 99. Yeah. I just want you to know. And then it gives you a little happy face of how many tabs you have open, so it means I have over 100 tabs open on my phone. But leveraged for good, it means I have the ability, or I like doing a lot of things at once, to keep a lot of spinning plates in motion all at once. Sometimes I drop a few. But so through the summer, we did some super fun family things. We did an awesome road trip. We took the kids to see 2 90s alt rock concerts. They got to see Blink-182 at the Gorge in Washington. And then we took them to Toronto to see Green Day with Smashing Pumpkins. We did some fun things, but lots of time away from home.
Nobody's going to feel bad for us because everybody's had it worse than we have, but we had the longest time apart that we've ever had in our entire 16 years together. And it was 10 days.
Yeah. So right from Toronto, I went to Texas for the CrossFit Games, and I was supposed to be home for a weekend in between. They actually ended up last minute requesting me to go early to Texas to teach a level 2 seminar, which was awesome. And of course, I'm going to take that opportunity. But yes, it meant we were apart for 10 whole nights.
Yeah.
17 and a half years we've been together, and that is the longest we've ever been apart. I believe the previous record was like 7 days. So from that perspective, that sucked. Texas was, the level 2 seminar was great. The CrossFit Games, I don't need to dwell on that too much, but it was a tough week.
Yeah.
It was obviously very difficult. I'm sure everybody's well aware of what that's all about.
Yep.
And then home for a bit, went to see Ryan and Jasmine up at the lake. But in amongst all these great things, so now being done school, is what am I going to do with all this knowledge? What am I going to do with it? So a couple of cool opportunities came up. I had some connections with the CrossFit Medical Society. They reached out to me and asked me to write the newsletter article for August and then lead a grand rounds, that's the first time I've got to do a grand round. So that was super cool. It's a session that can be done a variety of different ways, but it's basically the CrossFit Medical Society can give continuing medical education credits to its paid members, to its licensed healthcare practitioners. And so they can invite people in different fields or experts on things, and you can review case studies, or you can dig into literature, do a publication review, critiques or analysis or whatever. So my topic was sarcopenia and osteoporosis, so loss of muscle mass and bone density that happens as you age, and the lifestyle factors that can be used to treat or cure those things. Those are words that people like to dance delicately around, but basically the importance of nutrition, of course, emphasizing the importance of protein to support muscle mass and bones, and then the lifestyle factors of resistance training, basically. The CrossFit methodology, which is exercise and nutrition coming together. There's no protocol of only exercise that will work. There's no protocol of only nutrition that will work. There are basically no drug protocols that will work long-term, and certainly not without a horrible list of side effects. So, you got to do the thing, but you got to work hard. And so that's maybe like the difficulty of the pill to swallow with CrossFit is you got to do the work, and you got to do the work consistently for like a really long time, pretty much the rest of your life.
Yeah. So. You don't get to just show up and coast and go home and eat pizza and be like, I'm doing it.
Yeah. So there is not, if you have declining bone density or osteoporosis, there is not really a pill for that.
Yeah.
There's bisphosphonates, Fosmax would be the brand name most people would be familiar with. And kind of the focus of my talk was like I brought in something from the world of economics called Goodhart's Law, which is when a metric becomes a target, it ceases to be a good metric anymore, because we basically just start directing towards the test, and we've lost the big picture concept of what were we actually trying to accomplish. So with bone density, you get a bone mineral density scan, like a DEXA scan, and it gives you a number. But what you're really trying to do is avoid fractures. You don't want old people especially to break a hip or break a femur. Major bone breaks become a serious mortality risk. But because we use a bone mineral density scan as like a predictor, it's like looking into our crystal ball. Who's most likely to suffer a major bone fracture? Well, it's people with low bone mineral density. The pharmaceutical companies come in and go, okay, cool. So you just want a higher bone density number? And, people get fooled into that. So now they just start focusing on the DEXA scan instead of the outcome, the hard outcome of fracture risk. And so we invent pharmaceuticals that will change the balance. You have a constantly remodeling system going on in your bones. Osteoclast, break down old crappy bone and rebuild new bone, osteoblast. And there's this balance. It's like renovating your house constantly, break down, repair, break down, repair. The drugs suppress the breakdown activity. And so it shifts the balance. The building activity stays the same, but there's less breakdown. So you do end up with a better score on the test. It will increase bone mineral density. But what you end up with is just more shitty bone.
Right.
You have more bone mineral density, but it's of low quality because it should have been cleared out. It's like trying to, paint your walls without sanding them first. It's like you needed to prep first. You can't just keep slapping the new coat of paint on. It just looks crappy, right? Basically. So they actually don't recommend that anyone takes Fosmax for longer than 5 years. And it's questionable, the outcomes, the long-term outcome of whether it actually does anything to reduce fracture risk. And the drugs used for too long may actually increase fracture risk versus if you did nothing at all.
Right.
And they have a whole bunch of intolerable side effects like GI issues and all kinds of things that people may end up just stop taking them because they can't tolerate them. So if that's the only medical intervention is this possibility that we're not even sure that it gets you where you want to go, then what's the alternative? Well, the alternative is you've got to stress the skeleton. You got to be under load. You got to lift weights, back squat, deadlift, ruck.
Yep.
And you got to give yourself the building blocks that you need to build strong bone, which is primarily protein. People think calcium. That's not it. It's primarily protein. The bones are built out of collagen. 50% of the dry weight of bone is protein. So you need your collagen building amino acids, which come from animal products, specifically the joints and bones and skin and those kinds of things. So bone broth is awesome. Meats cooked on the bone, chicken wings, things with the skin on, things with the joints, ribs, like that kind of stuff. You get all those good collagen building amino acids. And then of course you do need the spackle, which is the calcium and phosphorus. The collagen is like this matrix, and then it's called hydroxyapatite, is made of mostly calcium and phosphorus, is what gets mineralized onto that sort of spongy looking matrix. So it's really, bone is a super neat tissue.
Right.
People think of it as just like your skeleton. It's just this, unchanging structure. It's not. It's metabolically active. It can secrete hormones. It's like all kinds of cool stuff is going on in your skeleton. So
cool. And this is on the internet, like YouTube, right?
It is on the internet.
Yeah.
I posted it on the BRIO weekend blog post a little while ago, the link to it, if you want to watch me do that nerd out on muscles and bones for like a whole hour, 45 minutes.
Take a deep dive.
The article I wrote that went in the newsletter originally for the CrossFit Medical Society, I called it the primer on protein. Just started with some base knowledge on protein and amino acid requirements for muscles and for bones. Sort of also opened up a kind of a cool opportunity for me to do more writing in that regard for CrossFit in general. CrossFit sends out the email of the day, the EOD, they call it, to anybody that subscribes to it. I would recommend anyone that's into CrossFit gets that. And then there's also certain newsletter things that go to like just CrossFit coaches. So anyone that's done a level 1, 2, 3, or 4, that one's called the Professional Coach. So my protein article actually went out in the Professional Coach yesterday as well, and took another contract with CrossFit to do more writing like that.
Yeah.
Also took a contract to do some mentorship stuff with new or existing affiliates on both the business or coach side of things, trying to, use some of our accumulated knowledge and wisdom to help new affiliates do their thing, do it better.
Yeah.
And then also doing some work with the brand team, which lives sort of in the marketing world of things. So that's where in my previous life did a Bachelor of Commerce and an MBA in finance and marketing. So yeah, just trying to help wherever I can.
It's a lot.
It is a lot, but yeah.
You like to stay busy.
I like to stay busy, and I like to have a lot on the go. And I think lots of people have been asking me since I finished school, what are you going to do now? And I was like, just kind of going to see where these things go. Lots of threads have been opened, and I don't have a real specific plan, but just, to kind of explore these different opportunities and
your
go with.
Your ideal scenario is mostly education based, right?
Mm-hmm. I like teaching, and I think, if we're talking about, using your strengths for good, just good ability to retain knowledge and hopefully convey in a way that makes sense to people. And
we've always said Jocelyn's superpower is her ability to like dumb down smart things for us normies.
I mean, that'd be cool. I hope so. I would take that as a compliment if anyone thought that that's what I was good at. I hope so.
I've said many times, we've read the same thing so many times. And she's like, wasn't it super interesting when they talked about this whole stuff? And I'm like, totally understood that too.
Try to use my skills wherever they are best allocated. So. Okay, so I taught a level 2 last weekend, and this question often comes up, what program do you follow at your gym? Mm-hmm. Many gyms outsource their programming to a third-party generic provider. I always brag you up and consider it a point of pride at BRIO that we don't do that. Yeah. That we have programming done in-house by one of the few CrossFit Level 4 coaches in Canada. So programming is done in-house by an experienced coach that knows you, that's met you, that understands your needs, understands our space and our equipment and all of these wonderful things. So programming wise, what's coming up in the next little while? September is always like this. Okay, back to the routine. What are we up to now for the next little while? Yeah,
we're following the David Riley How to Be a Superhero program.
Oh, nice. Gym.
Yeah, we've always wanted to do our own thing, like you said. I just find it to be so much better when I program for the people that I know. We don't need to worry about what Rich Froning is doing because none of us are Rich Froning. So for us, it's always been the fall is about getting back into a normal routine. And when you're in a normal routine, it's a good time to do a consistent lifting program. Mm-hmm. So between now and sort of leading up to Christmas, we're going to be doing a bit of a strength cycle Tuesdays. We always try to squat on Tuesdays because that's so important. But Tuesdays, we're going to be doing strict press and back squats. Thursdays, we're going to be doing deadlift and bench press. Fridays, we're doing front squats and strict pull-ups. So it'll be, kind of consistent for a few weeks, and then we'll slightly alter it and then keep going. And we'll do that for basically 12 weeks. And then that'll leads up to a CrossFit total towards Christmas. And then through Christmas, again, everybody's schedule's crazy and bananas and all over the place. So we just try to make it more like, let's do some fun stuff and more team workouts and all that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. And then
things that require less like linear progression.
You can kind of mix it up. And then after Christmas, we start getting ready for the open. Mm-hmm. Right now we'll be doing those specific lifting things, but I still want to do primarily CrossFit stuff. So on those days we'll have a short, generally try to make it like a more basic, just cardio blast kind of thing, especially on Tuesdays. It's always been our sort of sprinty Tuesday thing. And then on the other days, we're still going to mix it up. We're still going to do constantly varied functional movements, executed at high intensity, the regular stuff. Something through the summer that we were doing that has been great is Sundays have been like a team workout thing. And everybody has been nothing but positive feedback about that. Everybody,
people love it.
We went through a period of time where we were like, I don't know if team workouts are good. Sometimes people kind of like slack, but lately it's been awesome. People have been trying really hard because they don't want to let down their friends. So if that's the way the team workouts are going to be, that's great. We'll keep doing them. So Sundays will be a team workout or a partner workout. And then we'll continue on with Saturdays as our big Saturday where we have more time to work on some of the more advanced skills and things like gymnastics stuff, handstand push-ups, bar muscle ups, Olympic weightlifting, that kind of thing.
Yeah. Awesome.
Yeah. It's always a like fun time of year because people dig lifting heavy things, you know, and it's cool when you put the work in and then you test and you're like, holy shit, I added 40 pounds to my deadlift. That's a great feeling. And the key to that is consistency. So for everybody that's wanting to really focus on that stuff, again, like the Tuesday, Thursday are the really important ones because that's your squat, press, and deadlift. And then Friday as well is another good one.
Yeah, so we're squatting twice a week now, squatting heavy. I call it the sweater bod season.
The what? Sweater bod.
Yeah. Bulk up kind
of. You don't have to be on the beach. You can hide behind a pump cover.
Pump cover.
I think is what they're called now.
I mean, it just, CrossFit's, routine is the enemy, variety is the key, but like, seasonally, there just ends up being some natural variation where we are in Canada. We just run more in the summer. We just don't. We know the open comes at a certain time of year. We know roughly the types of things that are in the open. So there's a little bit of a seasonal or macro cycle variation to what happens with good programming in a CrossFit gym. And it's nice, I think, especially when you do CrossFit for a really long time, that you can give things a different season, I guess is fair to say. Like you can dig into some heavy lifting and the technique of it and fueling yourself for that for a little while. And then you can, ease off the heavy lifting for a bit and really focus on your conditioning and your speed and spend more time outside or, those kinds of things. I think it keeps it interesting. That's certainly what's kept me engaged in doing CrossFit for a really long time. Is I've always done CrossFit as the base, but favored or, tended towards, what if I really work on my gymnastics for a bit? Or what if I really lift heavy for a bit? And, it just keeps it interesting.
Yeah, for sure. And we have lots of people that in the summer, they want to do a marathon or whatever. So they end up doing way more running than they would the rest of the year. And like those things are great. And it's fun to mix it up. And instead of constantly varying day to day, maybe you're constantly varying like month to month kind of thing. And that's great. And
through life,
in a perfect world, the CrossFit training schedule would be 3 days on, 1 day off, 3 days on, 1 day off. And you would never miss a day and you would always do the thing. And in doing that, you would be able to mix it up more and still slowly progress at everything. But because most people just don't have the luxury of being able to consistently do that training schedule, it just makes it harder when it's a little bit more sporadic to get better at back squats or get better at deadlifts. Because it might be that you don't deadlift for 2 or 3 weeks and it's harder to get good at deadlifting when you're not deadlifting every week. So this will be just a nice, easy way for people to sort of get in and really like focus on getting strong, and it'll be fun to retest.
Having like time and consistency to do it well, right?
Yeah.
Intensity drives results. When it comes to heavy lifting, intensity is how much weight is on the bar. You can't have more weight on the bar if your technique is crappy. So, mechanics, consistency, then intensity with heavy weightlifting means you got to have good technique all the time, and then you can add more weight. So to have better technique, you just need more opportunities to work on it.
Yep.
You also have to just be like mentally engaged enough to be constantly striving for better technique. The coaches are there to help you and remind you with that kind of stuff too. So it all goes together.
Yeah.
I would say, especially now that I've joined the level 2 training staff, the whole thing is about coaching. It's about how to be a better coach and do better for your athletes. And the number one piece of feedback we get is basically my gym programs too much stuff and we don't have enough time to coach.
Yeah.
And it's almost always because their gym is following a third-party program. I won't name names, but they're built on volume. So they're usually programmed by or sold by a CrossFit Games competitor who does not own an affiliate, does not coach in an affiliate, doesn't understand normal people or how a class works, how a 60-minute class works. But they use their celebrity, their cachet to sell these programs. And then what they sell is just volume. It's just so much stuff. There's part A and part B and part C. There isn't enough time to coach. People are just it's herding cats through multiple things. So So instead of taking a less is more approach and being able to treat each thing with respect and then therefore intensity, if you just have to move too fast because you have a 5x5 back squat and a 20-minute workout to get through, well, guess what's going to happen to the back squat? You're just not going to go very heavy because you don't have enough time to warm up properly, to do loading sets properly, to do a proper set of, 5x5 back squats, 3 minutes, like on the 3 minutes minimum, maybe longer. If you're going like every 90, like that's not heavy training anymore. That's a different stimulus. So I think one of the things that I like or would point to as a strong suit of our programming is that we don't program so much stuff, so much volume. And you come to a class and there should be a proper warm up. There should be a proper loading phase and there should be enough time to go heavy, And then sometimes Squat Tuesdays, we always do like a little called a hot down. It's not the focus of the day. Super simple. Yeah, you can hit the bike and do some burpees for like 3 minutes if you want to get your heart rate jacked up before you leave. It's like, that's fine. But we're not also trying to do a whole Metcon in there behind the strength day.
And the other benefit that it's us is that, I'm far from perfect. So even just the other day, we had a day where I coached the classes and I was like, okay, that was a little much.
Whoops.
That was a little busy. It was hard to get through all the stuff. But then I see that and I can make note of it and next time improve on it, right? We can always be like tweaking things as we go. Whereas if you're following somebody's program and they like often wherever they are, they're like, oh yeah, that was great. It took me like 3 hours. Perfect. Nailed it. And well, that's great. You have the time to do that kind of stuff and still feel good, but they don't see what's happening gym to gym. So it's a nice thing to be able to do. And like you said, just make use of the equipment we have and make it flow. It's always been good for us.
I read a book or listened to an audiobook, Michael Easter's new book, Scarcity Brain. His first book was The Comfort Crisis, which is also really good. Highly recommend that one. We've been re-listening to it on our road trips. Scarcity Brain is sort of about like the human tendency towards like addictive behaviors or self-destructive addictive behaviors, gambling and that kind of stuff. But if you notice, everything is getting gamified. Everything is like a achievement unlocked. And this, like even Instagram is like, you're almost at 50 reels and it gives you a little badge, and Beyond the Whiteboard does it too. And like new milestone. So like people understand this scarcity brain. Michael Easter calls it all the time, this tendency. And one of the points he made that I feel like really, really gets reflected in the CrossFit world of programming is that people just have such a hard time accepting that more isn't more.
Yeah.
They're like, well, if one workout a day makes me pretty fit, 2 workouts a day is probably going to make me double fit, right?
Yeah.
And then 3 workouts a day is going to make me triple fit. And it's so hard to override those like caveman brain urges to accumulate more and go, actually, you need to be finding the minimum effective dose of exercise.
Yeah.
What's the fittest you could possibly be doing the least?
Yeah.
The least volume, the least reps. You need to flip the complete opposite. It's not how much training can my body handle before I break, mentally or physically. Usually it's mentally first for people. It's the other way around. What's the least amount of exercise you could do? And I feel like being super busy the last few years, doing my master's and traveling a lot with CrossFit, I was sort of forced into that. And now hitting that, like I'm about to turn 41 in a couple of days here. I think that's the way. That's the longevity approach. All the time I get asked at seminars, how often do you work out? People expect I'm going to say like, I do double days or like 2 pieces. I'm like, I looked at my Beyond the Whiteboard log last year and it was slightly less than 3 days a week. And I'm pretty fit. I'm as fit as I desire to be to accomplish everything I want in my life.
Yeah.
I'm also really pretty injury free, And I think those 2 things are related. But when I do train, I hit it really hard. I lift really heavy.
Yeah.
Also, I've earned that with good technique. And if it's a Metcon thing and the promotion is intensity meaning speed, I also will try really hard at those things. So I don't do any workouts where I like dern at a medium pace. I just, A, I don't have time. And B, I don't think they're very valuable.
Yeah.
And so I've been forced into finding what's the least amount of fitness time-wise, because I just was very short on time the last few years, to maintain like a pretty solid level of fitness.
Yeah. And it's all relative to what your goals are. If you are a 18-year-old and your end goal is to win the CrossFit Games, then you are on a different plan than somebody that's like 40, whatever, and wants to be able to play with their kids and be fit and feel good. And the way I look at it is the CrossFit Games people are condensing their training into a shorter span of years where they go super hard for 5 or whatever years. And then after that, they're pretty banged up and they're in recovery mode and they're done with their CrossFit career. And they might try to they still exercise and be fit and whatever, but it's certainly not to the level that they once did. But if you're just starting out and you're 40 something, it's like you don't have that base level to fall back on. You're building from new. So to come out of the gates and try to train like a 20-year-old CrossFit Games athlete, you're asking for injury. That's just way too much.
And even the smartest Games athletes that have the longevity, I think they approach that too. What's the best technique?
Sure.
What's the minimum, amount of times I can train this thing to not just do more volume? Matt Fraser was always like, because he was an Olympic weightlifter, he was a very accomplished weightlifter. He talked a lot about how he only ever did reps with good technique.
Yeah.
I actually saw this clip. This reminds me of him the other day showing he used to train in his basement when he lived in Vermont and just had this like very small little lifting platform area that like had a wall right next to it. And somebody said, well, what do you do if you miss a lift, like a snatch or something? And he's like, why would I miss a lift?
Yeah.
If I'm missing a lift, I'm training with poor technique. Why would I train with poor technique? And he just looked confused by the question. And I was like, oh, I love that. I wish that was more of a thing,
Sure.
He's not in there like throwing barbells around and missing reps. It's like he understood, the technique was the way.
Yeah.
To the point that the idea of doing a bad rep was like confusing to him. That was funny.
Yeah. And you see it like at a high level, the people that last a long time in the sport, relatively injury-free, are the ones that move really well for the most part. And, they're not overdoing it. But then you also have to remember this is their career and it's their full-time job and their whole job is recovering from their training. And so they don't go to work 9 to 5. They sleep a ton. They eat super well. Gone are the days where the CrossFit Games people are talking about fueling themselves on Snickers bars and stuff like that. They've all really implemented a good nutrition coach plan and all that kind of stuff. But their whole thing is like recovering from their training.
And they're paid to take risks.
For sure.
So
yeah. Different level than what normal day-to-day, I just want to feel good. I want to feel healthy. I want to feel like I can do what I want to do type of people.
But I think my point in what I'm saying there is the path to that. Intensity drives results.
Yeah.
If those are the results you seek, I want to be a badass now. I want to be really freaking fit. I want to feel good when I take my shirt off at the beach. I want to age well and have healthy joints and not be in the nursing home. And I want to be able to get my ass off the toilet and up and down the stairs when I'm 90.
Yeah.
If those are the results you seek from exercise, the determinant of that is still intensity.
Yeah.
You can't dern your way through, all of your workouts and achieve those things.
Yeah.
You can get close, you can get some results, but you won't achieve all of the optimal benefits that you would want.
Yeah.
But, and I can't emphasize this enough, intensity is earned.
Right.
So you don't just show up and go full send all the time and just lift as heavy as you can with no regard for technique. You prioritize technique so that you can train at intensity.
Yeah.
But you have to earn your intensity. But you need intensity so that you can get fitter.
Yeah.
So that you can give yourself the better future.
And that's the good thing about doing like a more basic strength program where it's mostly like powerlifting type stuff is it's way easier to improve your movement and lift heavy doing a back squat than it is a snatch. A snatch is a much more technical, difficult lift. It takes years to get really, really good at snatching so that you can lift a heavy enough weight to have intensity. So it's so much more comfortable for the average day-to-day person to just really focus on their deadlift and their press and their like the slower lifts.
And I would argue that the Olympic lifts are not strength movements.
Yeah, for sure.
Even Olympic lifters that need to train the strength portion of those movements do just squats, deadlifts, presses, front squats. Like, there's specific training for the strength portions of those things.
It's much more of a skill. It's an expression of power and speed and all that. Yeah.
Expression of fitness, which I think is why it has a lot of value from a neurological perspective because it's so demanding on your balance and your flexibility and all these other things.
Yeah. So there you go. Exciting fall ahead of us. Show up consistently, try hard, move very, very well. We'll get stronger.
Okay, so ongoing theme on the BRIO in the Box podcast this year has been questions from the community. So this one, someone sent me this morning, a friend of mine, a link to a paper saying, "What in the world is this? LOL." I was like, oh God, what's this? So published in June 2024 this year. Diabetes and Metabolic Syndrome Clinical Research and Reviews is the journal this is from. I'm not familiar with that journal specifically. The paper is titled Association of Low Carbohydrate Diet Score with the Risk of Type 2 Diabetes in an Australian Population, a longitudinal study. And so the finding is that the lowest carbohydrate diet people had the highest risk of developing type 2 diabetes across these years of follow-up. And so my friend obviously sent this to me to be like, eyebrow, like what the fuck is going on with this statistical or scientific chicanery here? But you see papers like this, and there's probably news articles being written of like low carb diet increases risk of type 2 diabetes. And you're like, okay, so I just took a little skim through it and sent my first thought. So at 2 points in time, big groups of people, 40,000 people in Australia, filled out a food frequency questionnaire.
So first problem right there.
Problem number one, food frequency questionnaires. I think I should find some and print them out or post them on just like absolutely how ridiculous a food frequency questionnaire is. Yeah. You're getting a very broad, fuzzy, unclear picture of what people actually eat with a food frequency questionnaire. You're relying on people remembering how many times in the last year have you eaten cantaloupe and shit like this. You're like, what are we even talking about here?
The accuracy is not going to be even close to worthwhile. I have no idea how many times I've eaten certain things in the last year. It's ridiculous.
So they're kind of hoping that if they just do it with enough people, that a small piece of garbage put into a pile of garbage somehow turns into something useful. Right. So food frequency questionnaires, almost anything based on a food frequency questionnaire could just be pitched right into the garbage bin right there. But let's continue to investigate. And so they analyze the data, they do follow-up. Average years of follow-up was 13 and a half years. And they just are looking for who develops type 2 diabetes.
Right.
And so they hypothesize that, I don't know why, they said our hypothesis is that the lowest carbohydrate diet intake is going to increase the risk of type 2 diabetes. Not sure why that would be. Because even in their introduction, they talk about how research indicates that low carbohydrate diets prevent or reverse type 2 diabetes. But then their hypothesis is the opposite of that.
Right.
So they're looking for the opposite of the typical finding.
And in a study, they have to declare what they're trying to find ahead of time, right?
This was not a pre-registered one as far as I know. They're just, that I'm not sure of.
They're just swinging at the fences.
Okay, so I'm like, well, what are we looking at here? So they divide the groups of people into 5 equal parts based on percentage of carbohydrate in the diet, estimated.
Highly estimated.
Highly estimated from the food frequency questionnaires. So the lowest quintile of carbohydrate intake as a percentage of calories is 37.5%, and the highest is 55%.
And 37.5% is not a low carb group.
So point number 2, no one in this cohort is on a low carb diet.
Yeah.
A 38% carbohydrate diet is not a low carb diet by anyone's definition. And they kind of, okay, so what does the title say? Low carb diet score. So they attributed a low carb diet score. So I guess they're not technically saying this was a low carb diet. They're just saying the lowest score on this thing. So I don't love the wording they're trying to use to create a certain impression in your mind that is not the real thing.
Because when the news headlines come out, they don't say what they just say. Low carb diet causes diabetes.
Yeah. So
study shows
we're comparing the highest to the lowest. We're comparing a 38% carbohydrate diet to a 55% estimated carbohydrate diet. That's not that different. That's basically the same. And there was another paper, I need to dig it up and find it, where it was an editorial of, proponents of the low carb diet that came out to say, we need to make a definition that we all agree on in the scientific literature of what is a low carb diet. Because you have some things like this where it's like almost 40% carbohydrate and they're calling that the low carb diet. And then in the actual low carb community, we would consider 20% to be low carb and then 5 to 10% to be like ketogenic. So they were like, we need to agree on the definition of these terms,
right?
Which is not what's happening here. And then, so of course, at the lowest intake of carbohydrate, there's also the highest intake of fat, right? So people are eating less carbs, but more fat. Percentage of fat calories in the lowest carbohydrate group is 41.5%. Percentage of fat calories in the highest carbohydrate group is 28.7%. So of course, you're eating less carbs, you're eating more fat. They also point out that the lowest carb group had the highest intake of saturated fat, but the difference is less than 3 grams a day from 32.5 to 35.3, 2.8 grams per day.
Right.
A food frequency questionnaire cannot give you that level of granularity of the difference of literally a lick of butter on the knife, there's no way. So I would consider that to be saturated fat intake is basically the same across all these groups. But the percentage of fat is high enough, it's about 13% different for that to matter.
Right.
So then the second point I said in my response to this was, Well, this to me looks like an argument for increasing percentage of PUFAs in the diet, because probably the increased fat is coming from vegetable oils. If it's not coming from saturated fat, it's coming from something else.
Right.
I mean, ideally, hopefully it would be coming from monounsaturates like olive oil and stuff, but I doubt it.
Yeah.
So this is probably what we're looking at is slightly less percentage of calories from carbohydrate, but probably because people are eating higher fat, like French fries and stuff, because they're still eating a ton of carbs.
Right.
But they're eating more like French fries and donuts and things that are just loaded with PUFA vegetable oils. The study started in the mid-90s, which is about when the PUFA intake just started to absolutely skyrocket. I was like, so this to me looks like vaguely supporting evidence that increasing polyunsaturates in the diet cause insulin resistance.
Yeah.
Which is an argument that I would make was what I think is going on.
And the combination of PUFAs and carbohydrates together is like a double whammy, right?
Yeah. So the PUFAs impair your ability to use carbohydrates for energy, and then the hyperinsulinemia, insulin can't do its job as well to help you manage glucose. So then your ability to manage glucose goes haywire, and then now you have diabetes.
Yeah.
So,
and some of these food frequency questionnaires are so stupid because they'll be like, did you eat whatever types of processed meats? But then they'll consider a hot dog with a bun and everything the same as
to be red meat.
Yeah, to be a red meat.
Yeah.
Yeah, not even processed meat. So how much red meat did you eat? And one of the things will be a hot dog, and that's the same as a tenderloin steak.
Yeah,
with
like
the
bun and the ketchup and whatever
those
else,
two things are completely different in their effect on your body.
Yeah.
But they are categorized as the same thing. And then the other thing with the food frequency things is you're relying on people's level of honesty as well as their memory. And there's been studies that show that unhealthy people generally try to lie more about their food in a positive spin.
Yeah.
And then people that eat healthy often underestimates like how well they're eating, you know?
Yeah.
So it's just such an unreliable system.
Yeah. People are not very accurate. And so then my third point in response to this was the authors of the paper also state that when controlling for BMI, about 70% of the effect of being in the lowest carbohydrate quintile could be explained by having an increasing BMI. So we're looking at people that get overweight, get diabetes. That's not new.
Yeah.
You know, obesity, high BMI is like one of the strongest predictors, or comorbidities that goes along with type 2 diabetes. And so then because this isn't a randomized controlled trial, we're just looking at data, you know, and it's like a Rorschach test. You're looking for patterns in the fuzz, in the static, and you kind of see what you want to see. But we have to step back and think, well, what are we actually measuring? What are we looking at? What are the groups of people? So maybe one of the possibilities, and this comes up quite often, is that people that are struggling with their weight are the ones that are more likely to try different types of diets.
Mm-hmm.
And so you see this with diet sodas. People that drink diet sodas are more likely to be overweight. Does that mean diet sodas cause obesity? Maybe. But could we say that in another way, that people that are struggling with their weight are more likely to choose a diet soda because they feel like they should maybe do that?
Right.
And so a possibility here is that people that are struggling with their weight, especially in the early part of struggling with their weight, you know, like I said, it was 13.5 years of follow-up, are maybe the ones that are trying to cut down on added sugars in their food, or cut down on refined carbohydrates, or maybe choosing more vegetable oils because you've been told it's like some kind of healthy thing. Mm-hmm. By the time a person gets to be morbidly obese, they've tried on average like 15 different times to lose that weight. They've made over the years many attempts at that. So we're not even sure what we're measuring here. Mm-hmm. Are we measuring that people that knew that they needed to try to do something about their weight 13 years ago, many of them arrive 13 years later at being obese and diabetic? Maybe, right?
Yeah.
There's many different ways you can tell a story around the data. So A, we can argue about the legitimacy of the data. Yeah. I don't think it's very legitimate. B, we can argue about the language used around the data, calling anything that's 38% carbohydrate, low carb as deceiving.
Yeah.
And then what are we actually tracking? What's the pattern we're seeing, and who are the groups? And there's self-selection bias into, well, why were they eating that way and not this way? And what are we actually tracking? So because there's so much noise, it's ridiculous and frustrating that shit like this even gets published.
Yeah.
Because you're like, what is even the finding here? I don't know.
Like, if you were to have like the 40-30-30 split, the 40% carbs, 30% fat, 30% protein is a super common like bodybuilder, or if it fits your macros type of formula that people use. And if you were to ask any of those people if they're on a low carb diet, they would all be like offended. They'd be like, absolutely not. I'm not on a low carb diet. Fuck that shit. And you're saying a 38% is a low carb diet? Come on. It's the whole thing is just ridiculous.
But then because average carbohydrate intake in the population is like around 55%, as it was in this one, government recommendations, if you follow the like My Plate or the old food pyramid, were like upwards of 60, sometimes 65% carbohydrate. So yeah, in comparison, that's a lower 40% carbs is lower than the average or than the government recommendations, but that's not a low carb diet.
Yeah.
That's not a reducing the burden of glucose and insulin in the blood diet.
Yeah, for sure.
I guess, well, maybe it is reducing because it's slightly less than the mainstream kind of approach, but
yeah. All those science studies, they're so great.
Well, yeah, we just have to be a little bit more critical. And when you see headlines, this was the thing that kind of drew me into nutrition, was like, people are confused. And that confusion is somewhat by design, right? To keep people confused about what to eat. So they just kind of throw up their hands and go, I don't know. And then they just eat whatever and don't pay any attention. Like there are certain interests that would like you to feel that way and to not know the right path, right? But I just thought I'm a rational, logical person. I have a background in mathematics and statistics. I was like, when you see like eggs are good and eggs are bad, it's like both of those things can't be true. So what is going on here? Right. Like how are, every week it's red meat's good for you, red meat's bad for you. And I just needed to dig in and understand how on earth is something that should seem so simple, so conflicting and confusing for people.
And the answer is generally follow the money.
Yeah, honestly.
Who's paying for the study?
Yeah.
And what is their optimal outcome? And you'll have your answer.
Where are the interests? Follow the money in general. Yeah. That's so true. I was having a conversation with one of the other seminar staff when I was in Columbus for our staff gathering. And I was like on a soapbox about something, nothing new. And he used the word conspiracies. And I was like, no, anyone that's ever tried to do any group work and get coordinated groups of humans to lie and keep a secret and cooperate on a project, is that's never going to happen. I was like, the things that exist in the world now are open. These are hiding in plain sight. There's no conspiracies going on. That the pharmaceutical companies make money off of selling pharmaceutical drugs. It's not a conspiracy. That's literally just how it works.
Yeah.
That the processed food companies make money by getting you to eat more of low cost, cheap input, cheap ingredient, shelf stable items. That's not a conspiracy. That's just literally how their business functions.
Yeah.
And so we just have to understand what's been incentivized, because whatever gets rewarded, you get more of. Whatever you incentivize is what you get more of.
Yeah. We've talked about this in probably the last podcast, but if you have cable, which we don't, watch TV and pay attention to the commercials. And the majority of them are some sort of food or some sort of drug.
Yeah.
It's like everywhere. You can't avoid it.
And that the U.S. allows the advertising of pharmaceutical drugs.
Yeah.
It's bonkers. There's only 2 nations in the world that allow that.
Yeah. But we get U.S. channels, so we see it.
And so if you think, oh, that doesn't work, it works, or they wouldn't spend money on it.
Yep. Ozempic right now, everywhere. Yeah. It's wild how much advertising is going on for Ozempic right now.
Yeah. A rational business would not spend money on something that wasn't a profitable investment for them. But what's interesting? The pharmaceutical companies, the amount of money they spend marketing and advertising to physicians is in some cases 3 to 5 times higher than the amount of money that's spent on marketing direct to the public.
Yeah.
So guess what works, right? It's marketing to the physicians and stuff.
The dealers.
And no doctor would say, and all the doctors I know are great people. They're good, hardworking, smart, caring, empathetic people that want to help people. But I think anyone would underestimate the influence that advertising has on them, advertising and marketing. Nobody wants to admit that they're being swayed or manipulated. I don't like it.
Yeah.
I think one of the best things you could do for your mental and physical well-being of yourself and your family is limit advertising, your exposure to advertising in any which way you can.
Yeah. No matter what, you're going to be swayed. Like, no bullshit, right? Like, it's just, you're gonna see something, CrossFit Games sponsor for the last few years. And you know what? We own GoRuck stuff. Like, it's just, no matter what, you're going to be swayed, but at least try to be swayed in like positive directions, I guess. Yeah.
Be the target market for exercise and healthy things. And
I was actually, maybe this is a good way to end things. I was sitting it was my birthday recently. And so Ian and I went up for a drink and we were chatting, and I was telling him how you and I have in the last little while created this habit of sending each other hilarious, but like super loving memes on Instagram.
Like happy marriage memes.
You'll see something about, you know, a couple loving each other and like, we're best friends and soulmates, and we'll send it to each other because it's cute and funny and whatever. And now the algorithm is changing, right?
Yeah.
Like I don't get any like that old ball and chain type of bullshit. I only get hilarious, cute, loving things about my wife is the greatest. I love her the most. And it's like, you can change your algorithms. You can change your stuff to be positive. And it's super interesting how much effect you can have just by on clicking on the right stuff. So every time you click on the weird, crazy banana shit, it starts to direct you more in that area. But if you can just avoid it and focus on the good, happy, positive stuff, you can like absolutely change the outcome of how you see things.
It's like your version of the internet.
Yeah.
Atlas and I realized this, that we're both on Instagram, but his version of Instagram that he sees is 100% different than mine. Totally. We're on like a different version of the internet. And so, yeah, exactly that. What you choose to interact with, what even you stop scrolling and watch for a few seconds longer, like they're tracking all that stuff. You'd be dumb to assume that they're not. So I like and interact and share with positive things only. Anything that bothers me or I don't like, I unfollow or put not interested. And when it starts to give you things that you don't follow, any rage bait, I call it do not engage.
Yeah.
Like negative things or, well, correcting the record of anything like that. Even if I know that they're wrong, it serves me no purpose whatsoever. And it only increases their engagement. If I comment on it or spend more time on it or share it and say something negative about why it's wrong. No, never. Yeah. That's one of the most ways to stay sane on the internet.
Yeah.
Stay positive.
Stay positive. Don't doom scroll.
And I remember, I think it was maybe Greg Glassman saying about CrossFit is that CrossFit did not build this basically like worldwide army of fitness enthusiasts, change the world of fitness by criticizing what other people were doing.
Right.
Greg and CrossFit got criticized a ton and all the debunkers, and it continues to this day. I just saw another stupid one the other day, but that's the biggest red flag for me. Anybody that's building their brand on criticizing or critiquing what someone else is doing instead of just putting forth their own methods and results is not a person you need to pay any attention to.
For sure.
So if they're just trying to be controversial or critical or the debunker people, those people are not worth your time. They're not worth the dog poop on the bottom of your shoe.
Yeah.
But someone's out there with like measurable, observable, repeatable results and a methodology that can be replicated that gets you those results, that's a person you want to listen to.
Yep.
So, there you go. I don't know how we got on that topic.
I don't know.
That rant.
That's how these go.
We sit down and we're like, what are we going to talk about today? We're like, not sure yet. We'll see where this goes.
We're doing well. Okay.
Yep. All right.
Thanks for listening, guys.
Thanks for listening. See you in the next one.
See ya.